What if everything we thought we knew about Archie's birth was a lie? What if the photos, the press releases, the carefully staged appearances were all part of a performance, a royal charade perfectly packaged and meticulously controlled? Now imagine this, a high-profile royal birth, but no hospital lockdown, no visible security detail, no confirmation from Portland hospital staff that Meghan Markle ever arrived. May 6, 2019. The day Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor was supposedly born is now under intense scrutiny because something doesn't add up, and someone is finally talking. A private doctor. A name once buried beneath layers of NDA and silent corridors. Now, that very individual has come forward, breaking the silence, cracking the narrative, and exposing what could be the biggest scandal to ever touch the House of Windsor. You see, the questions aren't new. They've lingered for years. Why was the birth certificate altered? Why did Meghan refuse the Queen's trusted medical team? Why did no royal official witness the delivery of a child who was seventh in line to the throne? But this new voice, a whistleblower close to the cork, claims the truth is far more shocking than we ever imagined. That Meghan wasn't just hiding her medical team, she may have been hiding the real identity of Archie's father. Yes, you heard that right. Not just a birth shrouded in secrecy, but a lineage now called into question. And if that's true, what does it mean for the monarchy? For Harry, for Archie himself? Buckle in, because the truth is clawing its way through the palace walls, and no amount of royal protocol can stop what's coming next. ChatGPT said, for a couple who once begged the world for privacy, Meghan Markle and Prince Harry have ironically become the epicenter of one of the most public controversies to ever rock the modern monarchy. You see, the Sussexes didn't just step away from royal life, they tried to rewrite the rules entirely. From their bombshell interviews to Netflix deals and best-selling memoirs, they've crafted a very specific narrative. One that paints them as misunderstood, mistreated, and, above all, unfairly silenced. But when it comes to the birth of their first child, Archie Harrison, something about their story never sat quite right. The timelines were vague. The details didn't line up. And unlike every other royal birth in recent memory, Archie's arrival into the world came with more mystery than celebration. Let's rewind to May 6, 2019. According to the official statement from Buckingham Palace, Meghan had gone into labor that morning and gave birth at the Portland Hospital in London. But here's where things begin to unravel, because despite being one of the most high-profile births in the royal family, there was no visible security presence. No helicopters. No blocked-off wings. No emergency protocol. In fact, multiple insiders at Portland Hospital later admitted that May 6th was an unusually calm day. No special arrangements. No VIP movement. Nothing at all to suggest that a duchess was giving birth within their walls. And that alone raises questions, big ones. Because every royal birth follows an ironclad playbook. For Princess Diana, it was a media frenzy outside St. Mary's. For Kate Middleton, it was a meticulously coordinated operation, complete with security convoys and official announcements. Even the Queen herself received timely updates when her heirs were born. But Meghan and Harry, they went silent. There were no press cameras outside the hospital. No royal correspondents stationed at the gates. In fact, the media didn't even know Meghan was in labor until after the birth had supposedly happened. And by the time the palace issued a brief statement confirming the birth, the world was left scratching its head. Why all the secrecy? What were they hiding? And then came the photo op. The one that should have reassured everyone. Harry and Meghan beaming with their newborn in Windsor Castle. But even that felt off. Meghan's appearance was flawless for someone who had supposedly given birth just 48 hours earlier. The baby, Archie, was wrapped so tightly no one could even see his face. And instead of joy, the moment felt staged like a product launch rather than a heartfelt celebration. From that moment on, whispers began to grow louder. The Sussexes weren't just controlling their narrative, they were shielding something. Something deeper than privacy. Something that's only now beginning to see the light. ChatGPT said. For generations, royal births have been treated not merely as personal milestones, but as national events. Think back to Princess Diana, standing outside St. Mary's Hospital, in 1982, cradling a newborn Prince William in her arms. The crowd erupted. The cameras clicked. And history was made in real time. That same tradition lived on with Kate Middleton, who despite the immense pressure of public life followed every royal protocol to the letter. She gave birth under the supervision of the Queen's trusted medical team, stood on those iconic hospital steps, and shared her children with the world just hours after delivery. It was ceremonial, emotional, transparent. But Meghan Markle chose another path. She broke with tradition entirely. Instead of following the royal blueprint, Meghan reportedly declined the Queen's medical staff. That wasn't just a modern woman exercising her right to choose, it was an unprecedented decision in royal history. No senior royal before her had rejected the palace's medical team, not even Diana. Not even Catherine. This alone sparked concern among palace aides. What was wrong with the royal doctors? Why bring in private physicians whose names, credentials, and affiliations would remain undisclosed? And that concern quickly turned into full-blown confusion when May 6, 2019 arrived and the Portland hospital showed no sign of a royal delivery. No lockdown. No decoy vehicles. No swarm of security. No sealed-off floors. Not even an uptick in hospital staff schedules. Just a quiet Monday, according to insiders. Then came the birth certificate, the official record of Archie Harrison's arrival, except it wasn't quite official. Meghan never signed it. That's right. The mother of the child didn't put pen to paper. Instead, it was submitted later by a palace aide, and even then, portions of it were redacted. A highly unusual move for a document of public record, especially for a royal birth. The father's name was listed, yes, but the mother's details were edited days later. Why? No clear answer was ever given, and it didn't stop there. Press access was limited to near silence. No photos leaving the hospital, no trusted royal correspondents present. No clear timeline of when labor started, or when it ended. Instead, Harry and Meghan issued controlled statements, framed the moment with soft lighting and choreographed words, and offered the world a version of events that felt more like a brand announcement than a family celebration. To some, it was a matter of privacy, but to others, especially those within the royal household, it was the first warning sign that something about Archie's birth wasn't just unusual. It was being actively hidden. Asterisk, this is where the story takes a darker turn because the closer you look, the more the pieces just don't fit. Let's start with the timeline. According to official reports, Meghan went into labor in the early hours of May 6, 2019, but by the time that announcement was made to the public just after 1 p.m. Archie had already been born. In fact, the palace admitted that the baby had arrived hours before anyone was told Meghan was even in labor. That's not just a minor detail, it's a glaring inconsistency. Why delay the announcement? Why pretend labor was still ongoing when the baby had already been delivered? Was it simply a mistake in communication? Or were Harry and Meghan buying time to shape a story? Then there's Frogmore Cottage, Meghan and Harry's private residence, and the epicenter of a growing wave of secrecy. Multiple staff members reported unusual activity in the weeks leading up to Archie's birth. Entire sections of the house were suddenly off limits. Longtime aides were abruptly reassigned, and some staff, according to inside sources, were made to sign non-disclosure agreements, legally bound to never speak about what they saw or heard. Why the lockdown? Why the silence? Even more suspicious. The typical royal security protocol that accompanies a birth was nowhere to be seen. Former royal protection officers have since confirmed that no escort logs, no motorcade movement, no documented hospital transfer occurred that day. For a member of the royal family, especially during childbirth, these protocols are non-negotiable. The absence of such records is not just unusual, it's unheard of. And then came the baby debut. 2 days after the supposed birth, Harry and Meghan appeared at Windsor Castle with baby Archie wrapped tightly in a pristine white blanket. But something felt off. Meghan looked radiant to radiant. Her hair was flawless, her makeup impeccable, her posture upright and energetic. There was no visible sign of the physical toll of labor. No swelling, no exhaustion, no vulnerability. It was a picture-perfect moment, too perfect. Observers quickly noticed that Archie's face was barely visible. His body was tightly bundled, with only the tip of his nose peeking out, and Meghan held him awkwardly, almost delicately, like someone unfamiliar with newborns. It felt rehearsed, like a performance, not a birth announcement. Soon, internet detectives armed with screenshots and slow-motion videos began revisiting earlier footage of Meghan's pregnancy. One clip, in particular, went viral. As Meghan crouched down to greet a child, her baby bump appeared to fold unnaturally. It didn't shift the way a real pregnant belly would. Some said it was just the fabric of her dress. but others weren't so sure. Subscribe our channel. Us British secret asterisk. The so-called moon bump theory resurfaced. And this time, people were listening. The shape and size of Meghan's belly seemed to change dramatically from one day to the next. Some photos showed the bump sitting high and round. Others, lower and almost flat. And then there were the coats, those oversized jackets and billowy layers she wore indoors. Even when temperatures didn't call for it. Was it fashion? Or was it camouflage? And what about the name Archie Harrison? Royals traditionally honor lineage, Charles, William, George, names steeped in history and heritage. But Archie, it felt casual, Americanized, friendly, marketable, almost like a brand. Some royal watchers believe the name was chosen precisely because it created distance from the crown. It felt relatable, modern, and intentionally un-royal. And that decision, coupled with every other deviation from royal tradition, painted a picture of a couple who weren't just making private choices. They were building a narrative. One carefully crafted, tightly controlled, and fiercely protected. But when control turns into secrecy, and secrecy into suspicion, the truth has a way of clawing to the surface. Asterisk, and then everything changed. The whispers that once lingered in online forums and dimly lit royal gossip corners suddenly burst into the spotlight, thanks to one explosive revelation. A former staff member from Portland Hospital, who had remained silent for years, finally came forward under the promise of anonymity. Her statement, leaked to a journalist and later verified by multiple reporters, was short but devastating. There was no record of Meghan Markle being admitted under her name or any known alias on May 6, 2019. No royal protocols were triggered. No VIP rooms reserved. It was a normal day. You see, royal births don't just happen. They are planned down to the second, code names, decoy convoys, lockdown procedures, and bulletproof documentation. Even if Meghan had used a different name, even if she had slipped in quietly, there would have been a shadow in the system. But there wasn't. Nothing. Shortly after, a former royal protection officer, part of the very team responsible for Harry and Meghan's security at the time, echoed this claim. In a confidential interview, he confirmed, "We never received a transport order for Meghan on May 6. There was no escort, no assigned vehicle, no route mapped. I would have been informed. This wasn't a clerical error. There was no movement recorded." That's when the entire story cracked open. Inside the palace, senior aides, many of whom had been suspicious all along, began speaking privately to journalists. Some admitted they were kept completely in the dark. Meetings about the birth were abruptly cancelled. Rooms inside Frogmore were sealed off, and staff were told not to ask questions. Even long-serving courtiers, people who had stood by the Queen's side for decades, began to express quiet alarm. And Queen Elizabeth herself. According to a trusted palace insider, Her Majesty was deeply unsettled. She had always believed that royal protocol existed, not just for tradition but for protection. The fact that Meghan had bypassed her doctors, evaded royal logistics, and then failed to provide any concrete documentation was seen as nothing short of betrayal. And then came the final blow. A man identified only as Dr. T, allegedly one of Meghan's private medical providers, broke his silence in a confidential legal deposition. While the official transcript remained sealed, excerpts began to circulate in the press. The most damning detail: Meghan Markle was not physically present at Portland Hospital on the date in question. "I did not deliver the baby." Wait, what? That single sentence detonated across every news outlet, YouTube channel, and royal blog in existence. If Meghan wasn't at the hospital, where was she? Who gave birth to Archie? And then another theory, once ridiculed, took center stage once again: surrogacy. Had Meghan used a surrogate? Was the entire pregnancy a performance, carefully staged to protect a deeper truth? And if so, why go through all the trouble? What exactly were they hiding? And here's where it turns truly devastating for Harry. Because if the official story of the birth was false, it opens a darker, more personal question. Was Harry even the biological father? It's the question no one dared ask, but everyone was suddenly whispering. The public, once eager to defend the couple's privacy, now demanded clarity. Because this wasn't just about secrecy anymore. It was about lineage. About legacy. About a child who may have been born outside the very system that gave him his place in history. What began as a quiet rebellion against royal tradition had spiraled into something much more dangerous: a full-scale unraveling of truth, trust, and the very bloodline of the monarchy itself. The fallout was immediate and brutal. Inside the royal family, Prince Harry found himself caught in a storm he never saw coming. For years, he had fiercely protected Meghan from the press, from palace gossip, from public scrutiny. He'd drawn a line in the sand between his old life and the new one they were trying to build. But now he was trapped. You see, if even a portion of the rumors were true, then Harry wasn't just complicit in a lie. He was the face of it. Friends close to the prince say he spiraled in private. Torn between loyalty to Meghan and the family legacy he walked away from, Harry reportedly began questioning everything. Had he been manipulated? Was he shielded from the truth to keep the narrative intact? Or worse, was he willingly blind, choosing love over clarity? The emotional weight was staggering, and while Harry remained silent publicly, his absence spoke louder than words. No statements, no pushback, just silence. For Queen Elizabeth, the situation struck at the heart of everything she had spent her reign preserving: order, tradition, stability. And now, in her final years, she was forced to confront the unthinkable, that a royal birth, once the most sacred of milestones, had possibly been falsified under her watch. Sources close to the palace said she was shaken, deeply wounded, and furious that she was not informed of key decisions made by Meghan and Harry during the pregnancy. Decisions that, in her view, undermined the institution itself. Outside palace walls, the public reaction was volcanic. Those who had once defended the Sussexes' right to privacy now felt duped. Comment sections exploded with accusations of betrayal. Former fans voiced disgust. Royal commentators, even the softer ones, called for accountability. The leaks hadn't just reopened old wounds, they reignited a firestorm. And Meghan. According to insiders, she was livid. Not just at the headlines, but at the betrayal from within her own trusted circle. The doctor's leak, whether intentional or forced, was a violation of everything she had tried to control. She had spent years managing her image, curating every detail of her story, crafting a global brand built on empowerment and truth, and now, that brand was crumbling. Netflix executives began to distance themselves. Hollywood insiders whispered about too much drama. Public trust, which had already taken hits during their tele interviews and business ventures, was evaporating. Because here's the thing, the moment Meghan and Harry stepped away from the royal family, they stopped being protected by it, and the same media machine they once accused of bullying them now had no reason to hold back. The Sussex narrative, a tale of two lovers breaking free from an oppressive monarchy, was beginning to collapse under the weight of its own contradictions. And maybe that's the cruel irony. In trying so hard to control the story, Meghan may have accidentally written her own downfall. A tale not of freedom, but of secrecy. Not of rebellion, but deception. And now, as the palace tightens ranks and the public demands answers, one truth becomes painfully clear. When you build a kingdom on narrative, even a single lie can bring it crashing down. And so, here we are. What began as a quiet birth announcement has unraveled into one of the most haunting questions ever to face the modern monarchy. At the center of it all, not a scandal, not a headline, but a child. A little boy named Archie. Born into a world of crowns, castles, and chaos. You see, somewhere beneath the noise, the accusations, the redacted documents, the staged appearances, there is the raw, unshakable truth of motherhood, the hope, the fear, the desire to protect. Was Meghan simply trying to shield her son from the media circus she had come to despise? Was the secrecy an act of love, or an act of survival? Or was it something else entirely? Because the deeper we look, the more tangled the threads become. Archie wasn't just a newborn wrapped in a white blanket, he was a symbol of rebellion, of branding, of everything Meghan and Harry said they were running from, and yet somehow brought with them wherever they went. And that raises a painful, unavoidable question. Was Archie a pawn in a much bigger story? A story of image over truth, narrative over transparency. A story that may never be told in full, because those who hold the answers have buried them so deep, even they might be afraid of what lies underneath. And what of the truth? Could it ever truly come out? Or has the moment passed, leaving only speculation, broken trust, and an institution that now bears one more scar beneath its golden surface? Some will say Meghan was wrong. Others will say she was right. But perhaps the more important question is this: if even the birth of a child can become royal warfare, what does that say about the cost of living inside the crown? Maybe, just maybe, the palace doesn't need another heir. Maybe it needs healing.